everyone, it's Neve here for Scrap FX and welcome to my art journey channel. Today we're going to be making a small vintage circular mini book using some of the Scrap FX products. So I was inspired to make this book from these two beautiful new pieces that have come out from Scrap FX, which are sort of decorative vintage type pieces. I can't really think of the word to describe them, but as soon as I saw them, I sort of thought they'd make great gates or openings to a book. So I decided I'd make them into my book covers and make sort of like a little vintage book. Now, I've been very inspired by watching people make artists trading coins, which are making art in a circular pattern. So I thought that I'd try and do that, and this would be a really great way to go about it. So I started out and I used the two pieces of the chipboard together to create the size of my circle, because I don't have a circle cutter and I just wanted to make sure that it was exact to that circle. And because I wanted to have a vintage feel to it, I decided to use some book text. So this is some old book text that was sent to me. It's a vintage French-English dictionary. So I'm just going in and aging up the papers a little bit more using some distress inks in walnut stain and tea bag, I think, just around the edges, sort of to add a little bit of shading and depth to the papers. You'll notice when I did it as well, I sort of folded all the pages just so I had them sort of folding in the right way. This is again one of the new stamps for this release, and it's a vintage medallion stamp. So again, I'm just going in with the vintage, the walnut stain distress ink and stamping all over it to give some pattern in the background. I didn't really have a plan of what I wanted to do on these pages, apart from the fact I wanted to make this little book. So I'm actually going through my little collage tub that sits beside me, and I came across all my Tim Holtz paper dolls, and I thought they'd be perfect as sort of little focal images on my pages. And I really liked them on their own, but I figured that the pages just needed something else. I was also trying to find, because all the paper dolls come in different sizes, what size would fit on well. Because the paper is quite thin, I didn't want anything that went over the fold in the middle, so I needed to make sure that the dolls either fitted on one side of the page or the other. So what I'm using now is one of my favourite collage treasured finds. This is a book that I got at a estate sale a long time ago, and it's a book, it's dated at the beginning at 1890s. It's handwritten poetry and different bits and pieces from a man, I don't know his name, I don't know his story, but he's just got the most fabulous handwriting, all these vintage aged papers, and I just treasure them. And this was sort of the estate sale that, you know, if anything, if it wasn't sold, it was going to the rubbish tip. So while sometimes I feel guilty about using it in artwork, I then think at least they're getting a second viewing and someone's getting to appreciate his beautiful penmanship and his stories and what he's written, rather than being on a rubbish tip now. So for those people who are a little bit squeamish about using vintage text, in a lot of cases you're actually saving them from a worse fate. So I understand where you're coming from, because I'm a school teacher, and again, books are, you know, sacred to me, and ripping them up is something I wouldn't usually encourage. But in the case of this, where it was going to be thrown out anyway, I like to think they're having a second chance. So now all I'm doing is just folding up my pages and sandwiching them together, just using some glue. I'm using some wet glue for this. Usually I'd actually use double-sided tape or dry glue, but because the paper is so fine, this Connect glue from Gina K works really, really well, dries really quickly, and you can get a nice sandwich with them. Unfortunately, I got a little bit of glue in between, so I was just cleaning that off. You saw that with a wet wipe. So in the background of my, for my book cover, sorry, I was considering just gluing the chipboard straight down onto the paper that I had, but it was going to probably be a little bit flimsy, so I decided to use, I had this craft card sitting by my desk. I used it sort of for another project, so I decided that I was going to use that instead, just to give a little bit more firmness to the front cover. And you can see me sort of going there and checking to see if everything's opening. There's me thinking, do I want the craft? Do I just want the plain text? So I'm going back through and making sure that everything sits okay. I did have to cut another circle because I'd used one side of it, and as I was doing it, I realized that this is slightly directional. I needed to have both my circles facing in a different direction, and I tried to do it doing the same way. So just be a bit aware and check as you go before you glue anything down what you are doing. So I'm gluing the cardboard straight onto my little booklet to make my front cover, and then I'm going to paint my chipboard and adhere that over the top. So again, just flipping through. Now, I did regret not doing this afterwards. If I was making this book again, what I'd do before I glued that chipboard, that craft paper onto the front of the book, I'd actually stick some ribbon underneath it to hold it shut. So if you were doing this, I would suggest you might like to maybe place some ribbon underneath that piece of craft paper before you glue everything down, just to sort of make it look a little bit fancy. As you'll see from the end page, the project on its own, just lying there on the desk, doesn't look all that inspiring. Hopefully it does when you open it up, but I think if it had a ribbon or something that you could sort of attach to the front, it might make it look a little bit different. So now I'm going in with some Payne's Grey to decorate my chipboard paint piece. So I'm just using a sponge, and you can see I put the bare minimum paint out. I'm just pouncing it up and down. The reason I'm not using a black is black would be very overpowering on this with everything with such soft colours. Having the Payne's Grey, it is very, very dark. It's almost a black, but it's just that little bit softer, so it sort of blends in a little bit more. I've decided that my piece just needed something underneath it, so I've used my walnut stain stamp again and this beautiful script stamp to stamp into the background, and now I'm just going to adhere everything down onto my page. You could see before I was trying out some different things, some different text, some map papers and so on to put in the background, and they would all work for different projects, but because everything on this project had such a sort of vintage papery feel to it, I decided I really wanted just to have it as plain as possible. So this is the finished project. You can see it here. I'm just now going through because I just needed something else. So I've got these Finnabair stickers that just have little positive sayings on it, and I really like how they sort of finished off the pages. So you could certainly use the Tim Holtz stickers to do the same. I quite like these ones when I'm doing vintage projects, so because they're actually already sort of coloured. You could certainly do that with your distress inks that you have, colour them up yourself, but these ones sort of have age spots on them. They just fitted in really easily, and I didn't have to do much to them. They're also again slightly more vintagey type sayings as well in comparison to the Tim Holtz ones, but they all would work exactly the same. So here is a close-up of the final project with all the different Scrap FX products in it. I had a blast doing this. There is a smaller set of these little chipboard front gate pieces as well, so I might be making an even smaller mini book to go along with this and have 2 books in their own. It'd also be great if you are into making artist coins as a way to make little mini books for that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye for now.